Bob, we bring you in on those notes because you know a lot about those two things. What does this mean, this change at the top for Apple, for the company itself, and for the tech landscape?
It's a big deal. Frankly, I think it's a big deal for the American landscape because Steve Jobs is an absolutely unique American. I've been saying since I heard this, he was sort of like Henry Ford plus the Beatles, all rolled up into one package. He was had a remarkable influence on our popular culture, the way we consume technology. He was a driving force in technology, like really almost no one we've ever seen.
I mean, I've heard people say hero, high-ranking people in the world of technology saying that to me.
Absolutely. The outpouring on Twitter, when you see what the other tech leaders are saying this morning, is absolutely unbelievable. Just the raw emotion, thinking about what this guy has meant for our country and our culture and the world at large. It's really remarkable. So he's irreplaceable. I mean, Cook is a great guy, and he's done a lot, as I was just saying, to bring down the cost of these products. It used to be, Apple was famous for the premium. But when you look at something like the iPad right now, it's not only better, it's cheaper. Right. And they've really taken the air out of the room for these other competitors who are trying to get in there. So Cook is a great operations guy, no question. But the vision thing, you can't replace.
What do you think about, we hear the pipeline is strong. Everyone is expecting, for example, the iPhone 5 to come out in October, and an iPhone 3 surely is already on the drawing boards. When do we start to really feel the loss as far as product innovation? Because this was really Jobs' strong point.
Right. I think in terms of products that are hitting the market, it might well be 2 or 3 years before you really see any meaningful change, because that roadmap is already in place, and they do have great execution, and he has a great team. I mean, one thing that's about Jobs now as opposed to when he was younger is that he's really learned to put a great team around him and rely on them to execute.
So you pick that up at Pixar? I mean, because previously, right, he was really micromanaging Apple, and when he left to go into the movie business, so to speak, a lot of people say he learned to listen more to the people around him.
Yeah, exactly so. And so when he left Pixar, you didn't see a big drop-off at all. They didn't miss a beat when he left Pixar. So some people are saying, well, they won't miss a beat here. But of course, it's not quite the same thing, because especially these days when there's so many strategic issues in the air, like this whole cloud computing issue and the social networking, how are they going to address these questions? It's not really clear to me who picks up the ball on those points.
Bob, we want to bring in some comments from the person who founded Apple with Steve Jobs, because we had him on Bloomberg West last night. So here's Steve Wozniak, known, of course, as the Woz, commenting, obviously, about Jobs' return to Apple. This is, of course, back, just to put it in context for you, back in 1997.
When he came back to Apple, I wasn't totally sure if that was, the greatest things. But, he's proven himself. I don't have to talk about that. Everybody knows all the ways he's proven himself as the greatest technical leader we've ever seen in our lifetime, at least.
So that was Steve Wozniak on Bloomberg West last night, speaking about when Steve Jobs returned to the helm, the CEO post back in 1997. Bob, to your point, speaking about how Steve Jobs himself matured and developed over the years. Obviously, he's an amazing visionary, but then it also seems like he learned the management skills and the technique to lead a giant corporation.
Exactly. And the thing is, you can say visionary, but you have to, if you think back about some of the things that he did, you realize what a real visionary he was. One of the things I always love to point out is that Xerox invented the graphical user interface, the mouse,
just didn't know how to market
Ethernet,
it, right?
email, and yeah, they didn't know how to market. They put it together in a computer before Apple did. But Apple, of course, was able to see what it really meant to a consumer and turn it into this incredible winning product.
And yet, on a totally other level, still just a guy. I mean, one of the things about Apple is this is the biggest public company, and yet still a private company, so fiercely protective of this brand that has become so valuable. There isn't a lot of information that escapes from headquarters. If you're a banker trying to do work for Apple, you're out of luck. If you go and try to talk to people at their retail outlets, like I went last night to just ask people what they think about this, and they were scared to talk to me because I'm a journalist. Steve Jobs is a guy that people want to know. Fair enough. People want to know what's going on, behind the doors. But people who get in to talk to Steve Jobs, he wants to pick their brain too, and he'll just talk to you too. So there is that mystique around Apple, which makes this just all the more fascinating.
Right. And the question I think really is, in the short term, the real risk that they have, because they do have a product roadmap and they do have great executors, and that stuff is there. The short term is, does his leaving impact the team enough that the team will start to break apart? Because that's
a huge question.
That's the real big question for me.
All right, Bob. One thing that you have told me in the past you're particularly impressed by was the fact that he did a very public about face. He had to change his position completely, and it changed the course of Apple, which is probably rare in someone who has to have a big ego. He has to lead this company, and he had to very abruptly do this about face.
Right, because he was always right. He knew what the consumer wanted. He was always right about that. But he lost the first round of the computer wars, right? He lost it to Microsoft, and he lost it for a specific reason.
As you said, he got his head handed to him.
He got crushed. He got crushed. The company almost went bankrupt, right? I mean, remember, hilariously now, right? Microsoft made an investment in Apple basically as antitrust insurance to keep Apple alive so they wouldn't be the only computer maker in the market.
Which as you say, it's hilarious now.
It's hilarious in retrospect. But so he got demolished in that first round, and that's why Bill Gates was confident enough to give him the money, because he wasn't worried about Steve Jobs and Apple.
It was almost
no problem.
condescending, right?
But,
like, oh, here you go.
But the big mistake he made in that round, and he learned, and that's the key thing about the guy, was he didn't open his operating system up to outside developers. What Gates did was open it up, and he realized that outside developers would drive the utility of the hardware platform farther and faster than the internal developers could do. And that made the device more useful, and because it was more useful, more people bought it, and then you got in that virtuous circle. So the second time around, Jobs, when he introduced the iPhone, said, aha, okay, I'm going to do a 180 on that whole issue. I'm going to open up my development platform. And not only am I going to open it, I'm going to create an ecosystem that makes it so easy for developers to develop products, beta test them, distribute them, market them, sell them. And by the way, I'm going to get 30% of that, which was one up Bill Gates on that issue. And of course, it made the phone untouchable. I mean, no one, Android is a good operating system, but the reality is they still haven't caught up, and it's going to be a long time before anybody catches them.
And people are addicted. That's the only word. People are addicted to Apple products.
Totally addicted.
Yeah, and you think this is really, I mean, the real resurgence, not really 1997 or the new Macs, but the phone introduction and the way he did this.
I really do, and I think that the proof of the pudding there is that you're seeing this giant rollover to mobile computing now, and the reason that Apple is leading mobile computing, of course with the phone but also with the tablet, is because of this move. And this is where the whole world is going right now, and Apple is way ahead because of this particular move.
Bob, we were just chatting during the break, and I mean, you were reminding us how when Steve Jobs was a kid, he was playing with transistor radios.
He was totally fascinated with transistor radios growing up. It's what led him into computing in the first place. But his love was always mobile music. He loved the idea that you could go somewhere and take music with you. And of course, what people forget is that when he introduced the iPod, MP3 sales were nothing. They were just minuscule. And if you did a traditional way of business planning, you said, okay, here's a market, what's our reasonable share of that market going to be? And you did the numbers, it would come out to a rounding error. But of course, he reinvented the entire industry because he was the person who saw what it meant to combine a mobile music device with the ability to disaggregate the songs on an album, take the ones that you like, and stick them your custom playlist on
the music industry as well. I mean, we've
Absolutely.
had producers on Swizz Beats, one of note, saying that's changed the way that we write music because it's all about singles now.
Exactly, and that's because of him.
That's the rap guy?
Yeah.
R&B rap.
Yeah, her friend, buddy.
Look, one of the things that I think that Apple did, which was amazing, was get consumers to pay 98 cents for something over and over again, right? Because in the past, who wanted to enter credit card details, and are you really going to get consumers to pay a little amount of money for a little bit of information? But it was easier to steal music with LimeWire. Now it's easier to buy it on iTunes.
Yeah, exactly right. And that created another whole industry in terms of just pure consumer confidence about the internet and internet transacting. But what's really interesting, of course, about the music industry is that everyone says, people for years said the music industry is broken, it's broken. It wasn't broken, it just had the wrong business model. And as Matt's is saying, once you said, wait a minute, instead of paying $14 for an album which has 2 good songs on it and a bunch of songs I don't really like, let me pay 99 cents for the ones I really do like, okay, that's a fair trade. So he just brought the pricing down to what the market was willing to pay, and of course the cash flow that he's generated from that is phenomenal.